Hi everyone, how are you guys doing? Welcome to the channel. And let's talk about the full moon in Scorpio that's upon us now. Now, in the tarot, Scorpio is represented by the death card. It's funny, I think a lot of Capricorns, when I talk to, they're represented by the devil in the tarot, and a lot of them go, way! But every Scorpio I talk to, and when I tell them that they're represented by death, they go, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that checks out. I want to show you guys on the Tree of Life where death is. So if you're not familiar with the Tree of Life, these white pathways, do you see these in the center? Disregard those. But I'm talking about, so we have these circles. There's 10 of them, right? From aces through 10. They kind of do a lightning path, that's what it's called. Now, these white lines, there are 22 of them. So they represent the major arcana. And death is right here. Death goes between Tiferet, which is the sun, into Venus, which is Netzach. Interesting, because we're in Taurus season, and Scorpio is the zodiacal opposite of Taurus, and Taurus is ruled by Venus. So very interesting that we have Venus here, and its opposite is the path. It's the sun here in the center, Tiferet, is meant to represent the higher self, the illuminated self. A lot of people say that this is a depiction of Buddha consciousness, Christ consciousness, 5D consciousness, as is the lingo in the New Age community. So it's interesting that the path upwards towards the higher self is death, is the opposite of Venus or Taurus. Now, Venus is all about pleasure, it's money, luxury, finances, things that feel good. You know, a lot of Tauruses, they fixed signs, they're very stubborn, obviously, but who isn't, right? But Tauruses, they like to be surrounded by their things, their comforts, the very cliche creature comforts, right? That's very represented here in Venus. Now, death isn't a representation of you must let go of all of your earthly belongings. You know, this isn't like a Puritan Buddhist or Christ teaching. It's like leave everything you own and follow, the path. That's not what death is about. But I will say that it is about a dismantling. It is about the question of reliance on too many things, or reliance on too many comforts, really. Comfort can keep us stuck, right? And the bull, at least in my opinion, when it comes to zodiac signs, the bull is the strongest, like the kind of heaviest, most grounded energy. That is great because it allows Taurus energy, and I'm not talking about Taurus people. When I talk about the zodiacs, I talk in a very archetypal way. We all have all the signs within us. Even if you look at your chart and there are no planets in that, for example, I don't have any planets in Taurus myself, but the house is there. It's actually on the second house with a little bit of the first one in there for me. So there is that energy. So look at the houses if you don't have any planet correspondences there, all right? So you still have something. You still have that energy in your chart. None of us escape it. All right. So as I was saying, death is that dismantling. It is letting go of too many comforts, because too many comforts can keep us stuck. As I was saying, Taurus is that heavy, grounded energy, which has its positive side, of course. Everything has its light and dark. And its positive side, and from my learnings, is that from the stubbornness, from that fixed sign, they kind of almost hammer the same nail. They're very focused on that one thing, that one path, that one topic. And through that focus, it gets to expand, right? If you're kind of digging a hole in the same spot, guess what? That hole is going to get bigger and deeper. So that's kind of the idea. There is improvement there. But with death, you also want to ask yourself, am I like in the right spot, is what I'm saying. You know, am I digging the right hole kind of thing. All right, so let's pull some, actually I want to pull from the Supra Oracle, one of my favorites. I was hesitant to buy this deck because I've seen reviews and I think the artwork is beautiful, but I've seen some of the book descriptions and I found it to be a little bit confusing. When I first saw it, I was like, what is this saying? But I kept thinking about this deck, and so I decided to get it anyway. Because I do love the artwork, and because it is based on Jungian teachings, and I am a Jungian student, it felt to me very much like a tarot deck. It's gonna be confusing at first, but the more you learn and the more you dig deeper, not only in the deck, but in your learnings, then the deck will make more sense. And lo and behold, when I do read the book, I already know that it's going to be a bit poetic. It's going to take me some time. This deck, if you're at all curious, I'm kind of doing now a deck review, but it's approach the guidebook, no, even though it's not a whole lot, but it's going to ask you to sit with it for a bit and ask some questions. We're not going to do a deep dive today here, but we are going to pull a card. Actually, we're going to pull two. Interesting. Forgotten and sageness. Actually, I do want to look at the keyword for forgotten. Another annoying thing too about this guidebook is that the cards have no numbers and they're not in alphabetical order. So that drives me a little nuts, but they're not easy. They're not hard. They're not hard to find. So the keywords for forgotten are ancient, origin, curiosity, exploration, and discovery. And funny how sageness is that intelligence, is that psychic awareness, is that wisdom. So we have forgotten wisdom, basically. We have this sageness, this wisdom. You know, sages, when you think of it, it's not just like the sage that you smudge with. A sage is a wise person, a witch, a guru, a teacher, right? And forgotten, to me, this feels very, well, this deck is very much about deep inner exploration. And that's what it's telling me. It's this forgotten inner sense of wisdom. We perhaps, if you're a reader like me, or if you're kind of more insecure, let's say, in your path, we tend to ask too many questions for people. We tend to ask too many opinions, when really, it's really about asking the self. It goes back to our tree of life, actually, because Venus is pleasure, right? There is pleasure in community. There's pleasure in friendship, in love, in being with people. But the center here, the middle pillar, is more about including everything. When I say that, I mean, we can ask a lot of people and they will give us our opinions, but at the end of the day, we need to consider the other side of the tree, which is Mercury, and that's our thoughts, our mind, how we're thinking, right? We have our feeling function and our thinking functions to kind of get into the self, all right? So when we're asking too many questions, we're too much in our feeling function, in the sense that we're seeking something outside of ourselves instead of taking the feeling function and the thinking function and kind of marrying the two and going within. All right, so let's shuffle this deck. a few more times. And let's pull some cards on, let's see, maybe there's a new message for us, or we're gonna get some more of the same. I do still have my death card out here. I didn't want to put it back in the deck. We're talking about the full moon in Scorpio. It's almost like I'm asking Scorpio energy what it has to teach us. Amazing. I'll show you guys in a second why I'm smiling. Because it's really interesting. So number 7, this is actually, oh my gosh, shut up. This is Venus in Scorpio. So the 7 of Cups is Venus in Scorpio. Amazing that we just talked about Venus and we have the card of Venus in Scorpio. Now, another reason why I smile is because all of these, they're called Sephiroth. The Venus one is actually not the 7th Sephiroth. So all the 7s in the deck correspond to this Sephiroth or Sephirah. Even if I believe the other 7s, they don't always correspond with Venus in here. That's where the tarot gets a little confusing, especially if you're kind of a beginner. So I don't want to talk too much over it. But I will say all the 7s, regardless of their astrological correspondences in the card, they all correspond with Venus here, or this green circle. So we got it. We got the 7 of Cups. That's confusion, right? That's confusion. Confusion in the feeling function. Basically what I said, because we have the cups. Cups are feelings. Cups are the feeling function. I keep saying function because Jung is the one that kind of talked about our 4 main functions, right? Intuition, sensation, feeling, and thinking. I'm definitely more of a thinking function person. We all have all 4 of them, but one is just stronger than the other. So we've got the 7. Another reason why I smiled is because the middle one is the 6 of Cups in reverse. The 6 Sephirah is the center one, the Tiferet, which is the sun, which is the self, right? The illuminated self, the higher self. And it's in reverse. It's interesting because the 6 of Cups, is the card of pleasure. I know in the RWS, we tend to talk about it being a card of nostalgia. And it is. No, I'm not saying it's not. But really, its hidden aspect, or its esoteric aspect, is of pleasure. So pleasure and nostalgia, we can be stuck in the past, especially with it in reverse. We can be stuck in the pleasures of the past. And we tend to forget the wisdom. The wisdom of the past, of course, but the wisdom of the present moment. Sageness, to me, talks about a presence. It takes the past and everything we've learned, and it takes especially the present, knowing there's wisdom here from all the things lived, to shift us, to transform. Death card is transformation, and it transforms us into the future. The future is made now. The future doesn't actually exist, right? We get to create the future through the present, right? If I decide to never make a video again, I would have to decide, like, for example, today, for it to never happen again. That's the future, right? Or if I decide right now I'll become a vegetarian or something, I already eat mostly vegetarian, but mostly. I haven't taken the 100% leap for various reasons. But you get to decide. It takes a decision now. It takes a decision today for you to, for it to move us forward. Hope that's making sense to you. So we have the 6 of Cups, right? Going back to the higher self and the pleasure aspect. Then we have the Ace of Discs, also in reverse. To me, what this is saying is that movement forward that can be unclear. The Ace of Discs is new beginnings, right? Especially with discs or pentacles, depending on the deck that you're using. It talks about the physical. Discs are the physical. They're the present moment. They are your everyday life, the everyday things that we deal with. But with it in reverse right now, perhaps we could be not dealing with present energies because of nostalgia, because we're still kind of pleasure seeking in a way. And it's causing the Seven of Cups, which is debauchery, confusion. There's a perversion of the energy that creates confusion, that creates kind of this muddy, foggy, it's kind of what I'm picturing in my head, this fog over our heads, over our minds. No wonder we were confused, right? No wonder. So Death, with this full moon in Scorpio, get back to your sageness. You know, the fog I was talking about, you see how this card is, there's all this line going on. Of course, it's meant to represent like the night sky, but the night sky is dark. It can feel like we're walking through some darkness right now. So in the darkness, it is calling for us to tap into our sageness, to tap into that inner knowing, because earthly pleasures, for example, can be confusing us. They can be hindering us in some way, causing confusion, right? Seven of Cups. So it's asking us to move away from that. All right, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the Tree of Life. I've brought it a few times before, but I love it. I love how it kind of relates everything, and everything kind of makes sense, right? With how everything kind of connects and everything that I talked about. So thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you guys next week.